Well, welcome and good evening. Appreciate you being here to the Ogden City Council meeting for April 22nd, 2014. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present with the exceptions of Councilmember Blair, who was asked to be excused. We will ask Vice Chair Gochner to get us going on the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, we have some scouts here tonight, and Joseph Stevens from Troop 93 has agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Joseph, if you want to come up to the microphone. Thanks for helping us out.
Oh, and he's in his uniform, too.
I'm sorry I lowered it.
Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You be seated.
Oh, it's not working.
Let's call him back.
Yep, come on back up.
Bring your troop back up here.
We need you guys.
All of you.
This is not working. We need you guys all to tell us what merit badge you're working on and tell us your names.
Tonight we are working on the community, citizenship of the community and communications merit badge.
Also, give us each one of your names. Why don't you just line up and speak your name into the mic for us.
I'm Joseph Stevens.
Oh, into the microphone.
I'm Joseph Stevens.
I'm Sky Felix.
I'm Tyler Overson.
And I'm Dayton Bludnick.
Thanks, you
Great,
guys.
thank you.
Appreciate your leaders bringing you, too. Scout troop doesn't go very good without leaders. Appreciate you. We'll now observe a moment of silence. Thank you. First item on our agenda tonight is a recognition of the Weber State men's basketball team, and we've asked Councilmember Garner if he would read a proclamation and help us with that.
Chair Heyer, it's my honor to read this tonight. This is a joint resolution of the Ogden City Council and the Mayor honoring the Weber State University men's basketball team for an exceptional 2013-2014 season. Whereas the Weber State University men's basketball team had a tremendous season, finishing with a 14-6 record in league play and a 19-12 record overall. On March 15th, 2014, the Wildcats beat North Dakota 88-67 in the Big Sky Conference Championship, earning their 21st Big Sky Conference title and securing the most titles of any team in conference history. And whereas the team competed in the Big Sky Tournament Finals for the third consecutive year and went on to the NCAA tournament, marking the Wildcats' 15th time competing in the tournament. The team went on to play number 1 seed Arizona and gave them a good game, losing 59-68. And whereas the performance of the individual players was outstanding and each player contributed to the success of the team, 4 Weber State players received Big Sky Conference honors. Davian Berry was named the first team and named Conference Most Valuable Player. He was selected to participate in the Reese's College All-Star Game as one of the top senior basketball players in the country, and was selected to participate in the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, which is one of the national or top pre-draft tournaments in the nation. He also was named to the National Association of Basketball Coaches All-District First Team and received the Associated Press All-American Honorable Mention. Kyle Tresnick was on the second team, marking his second straight year to earn conference honor. Joel Bollenboy received honorable mention and was awarded Conference Defensive Player of the Year, the second Weber State University player to ever hold this honor. Jeremy Seglin was recognized as Freshman of the Year after starting all 31 games for the Wildcats. And whereas Coach Randy Ray and the other amazing coaching staff did a remarkable job guiding the Wildcats, Coach Ray was named the Big Sky Conference Coach of the Year, his 4th time receiving this honor in just 8 years. He ranks second on the all-time list for Big Sky Conference wins and is just the third coach in conference history to reach 100 career Big Sky victories. And whereas the Wildcats had an incredible record-breaking season with the 27 straight conference home wins, advancing to postseason play for the 6th straight season, and winning more than 10 conference games for the 8th consecutive season, this season Weber State also became the first school in Big Sky history to win 500 conference games. The hard work, performance, and determination of this team have made the Ogden community very proud. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby congratulate the Weber State University men's basketball team, athletes, and coaches for their tremendous achievements throughout the 2013-2014 season. We extend our sincere appreciation for their dedication and hard work and for placing the Weber State University's men's basketball team in the ranks of the best. Go Wildcats. And it's my honor to propose that we adopt Resolution 2013-4.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Garner and seconded by Councilmember Stevens for adoption of Joint Resolution 2014-4. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, well, let's bring them up here.
Council members, we probably need you guys to come in front together. We tried that last year. Incredible height.
Don't be blocking now.
Okay. This is a huge group. Sorry.
Smile.
I don't even like sports, but I love watching sports. We were sneaking on the computer at work watching.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You actually need to lift that up. You usually have to take that down. I just want to thank everybody on the city council and for all of your support. And not just that, but what we've really found over the last few years is we have gotten tremendous support from the whole city of Ogden. Mike has been tremendous, and the city has been tremendous, and we can't do the things that we do without you. It means a lot to us, and I don't think there's a lot of teams in the Big Sky that have that same total support from school to community like we do. So that makes this place extremely special. And again, we don't take that for granted, and we work really hard to try to make you guys proud. But again, it goes hand in hand. So thanks for all you do for us, and we'll go try to do it again next year. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate
Coach.
it. Thank you.
We really enjoy doing this and would like to be able to do it for you again next year. So with great leadership, I'm sure we'll see you here again. All right.
Thank you for coming, and I have to add, I think it's quite remarkable you are all here during finals week. So, good luck.
Well, that's a fun thing to do. The next item on our agenda is some public hearings. The first is concerning fiscal year 2014 budget amendment for the Grant Promenade, and we will be hearing from...
Mr. Chair, we're going to start with Laurie and then have Justin and Greg and then Tom. So there's 4 of them
Okay.
that will be presenting on this.
Good evening. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the budget opening section for this. And the purpose of this ordinance is to appropriate additional funding for the Grant Avenue Promenade project in the amount of $2,166,330. This additional funding is derived from several areas, which includes a transfer of legal, professional, and technical funds in the amount of $25,000, a transfer of Class B and C road funds in the amount of $315,000, a transfer of BDO lease revenue in the amount of $1,620,000, and the redistribution of current CIP funds in the amount of $206,330. And this increases the total city budget by $3,280,000. So are there any questions on the budget portion of this budget opening? Okay, thank you.
Chair Heyer and other members of the council, thank you for your consideration of this. We have put a lot of effort into incorporating active transportation and complete street elements into this promenade design. As you'll see, thank you. As you can see, here is a concept drawing that was done of the promenade, stretching from 22nd to 21st Street, 1 block of it. We have decorative elements of going with concrete decorative intersections. We have banding on the sidewalks. We have dedicated bike lanes, widened pedestrian elements on either side. We've de-emphasized motor vehicle traffic to slow people down. We have some mid-block crossings in certain locations that are proposed. This one, again, is in between 21st and 22nd Street. The overall concept proposes that we eventually get from 18th Street all the way to 25th Street with this design, tying in the River Parkway all the way with downtown. This initial phase will get us from 22nd Street to 20th Street and also do a decorative element of the intersection at Kiesel and 22nd. We have done a lot of work to include these decorative elements and landscaped islands to make sure that they are functional, coordinating all the utilities, and also aesthetically pleasing in the park strip. But there's the picture I was looking for right there. So you can see the separation of the bike lanes, also with the pedestrians by these landscaped islands with the motorists. So, do you have any questions on this concept? I know Greg Montgomery is going to talk more about the landscaped islands and the plantings within them.
What is the percent for art funding going to be used for?
The percent for art funding will be used to help fund the decorative elements within the one of the intersections.
So for concrete?
Mm-hmm.
Is that art?
Well, I think the way they're using it, it would be where they're putting the pavers in and the decorative intersections would be classified as art.
This won't be pavers, though. It'll be kind of a stamped concrete.
It's actually beyond stamped. It's colored, and it'll be saw cut on the intersections, and also the ramps will be a different color, and it'll also be banded to have 3 different colors within them. These intersections are about $125,000 a piece.
And the funds are authorized in the percent for art ordinance to be able to use it for this kind of streets and things when you're doing the decorative part. It's allowable. It's allowable for lighting. It's allowable for several things that are on that street, according to the ordinance.
So, hey, you said something, you haven't mentioned the Kiesel before. Tell me a little bit about that. You said, is that an additive to the project?
No, this was always kind of planned to tie in right there because we have the junction, and then with the development going on there at the LDS Temple site, this will include a decorative element to be able to have people cross with a similar fill between 22nd Street into the junction.
This is beyond the scope of this phase of the project, but I know that it's, this is just a small section of the part you said we intend to do, from 18th to 25th. And I think it's pretty important if we're going to do this, that it be a real high priority that the rest of it be coming in succession, before we all die.
Yes, in fact, this is a project that's been talked about for, I'm guessing, 30 years. And so we now have the opportunity and want to act. And with the temple drawing in, probably they were estimating 500,000 to 600,000 visitors to downtown. It'll connect in there. And so we have the design that we're finishing up here with phase 1. We'll design the rest of the project and aggressively seek funding, whether it's internal city funds or outside sources to fund the completion of this project.
Or both.
I think there's two important elements to point out. Number one, as we complete the project from the river to 25th Street, it will increase the flow of traffic and business opportunities in this area. And the other opportunity would be that it would become a place of destination. We now have the junction, the historical 25th Street, but also the Grant Promenade would add to that picture that we're creating in this area.
It's a good comment, and Tom's going to actually talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Don't give all his speech, because then he'll just get up and go home.
What's your anticipated timeline for this project, the 2 block?
Our anticipated timeline is to be done by August 1st for these 2 blocks.
With solid ground for the marathon.
Define solid ground.
High adventure.
It'll be good.
We'll have a paved pathway of at least 10 feet for the marathon. So they can run on solid pavement and not on road base. So we're working out those details to make sure that's going to happen.
Just have to be first through the finish line, not last.
Thinking a zip line maybe through that section.
Yeah, we're not doing a zip line, but that's a great idea.
Oh, it's not. Risk management will be all over us on that one.
Gotcha.
Great.
Thank you.
I wanted to touch on, leave that drawing up, that helps. Yeah. Touch on a couple of the design elements and things we're looking at. And as Justin had mentioned, back when we did the CBD plan in 2004, I think it was, Grant Promenade was one of those key things we had talked about then, and with our open houses and development at that time was something we had buy-in from those involved in the plan development of the businesses and the like to do something special. And the design that we have here really has gone to that point of creating a special area. I think a few years ago I showed you what Long Beach had done in their downtown, where they put a couple pots at each corner and then put some little cement barriers and said this is the bike lane separating. This is much better than that scenario. And we have a lot more things to deal with than Long Beach does in terms of climate on what happens on the road. So as we've looked at this, we've made sure that we're designing this to do a couple things, to look at salt tolerance, to look at the winter heat, but also survivability during the summer heat. I think I said winter heat. I was thinking of two things at once, the summer heat and the winter cold. And to be survivable, to look at low water usage, but also to look at these things to be stormwater cleansing areas. And so the design also looks at taking the runoff from the roads and helping go through this filtration of these landscaped areas. So then that also helps in cleaning the water that goes to our rivers. the design really becomes a solid island, and I think on that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Dr. No,
I didn't
you're
mean to
fine.
mess that up, then I won't.
Nope. I will get it on there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And so we look at how to make sure these features give that good impression. So there's a design scheme that MGBA has developed in the landscaping concepts. And you'll see that, I can't blow that up, but there are planting sequences that take place, starting off with a low area that's stone crop sedum, then going into compact mahonia. From that, then we go into some grasses, and then to the low-growth sumac. And then that pattern repeats itself, so that as you see those different color variations, that's showing how those different plant materials will go. And so you'll also have some different colors and textures taking place with the sedums and the flowers that they produce, the fall with the golds from the ginkgos as the trees, and even the reddish colors that the low-growth sumac will produce. So you'll have a good variation in colors, and it really create an interest throughout the season along these islands. When you come to the mid-block crossing on this project, the mid-block crossing will actually be raised so it's level. So a pedestrian going from one side of the street to the other isn't stepping off a curb. They're walking level across. And the road will actually be gradually raised up to that crosswalk to help give the pedestrian a better definition. This is where you can cross, and let the driver know, to stay slow because there is a little rise that you're coming up to. And we make sure we've got the sight lines needed. The other things we're looking at with the firm that is doing our design work is then to incorporate at the corners special signage, street signage, taking off the theme that we did with the promenade sign down at the river to identify which street you're on, so the Grand Promenade, and then whatever street you're on, and to carry that theme through at the intersections on signage, so it'll be a very different sign than we have as our normal street signs. And that's another amenity we're adding. As we look further to the south, the paving patterns will change. From the Temple block going to the north, we really have looked at the feel of that space is different. Buildings are not right up against the sidewalk. So we're using a green park strip, a planted park strip, in addition to the islands from the Temple going north to transition towards the river. But as you go to the south from that point in the design concept, they'll all become a paved pattern that has a lot of different color and texture to it. And then instead of having trees and tree grates, we're actually going to have tree islands in the park strip so that the trees have a better survivability and they don't push up the sidewalks next to it. They'll have actual space to grow. So as we move towards the south, that texture and pattern changes and adds some more urban design elements to it. And so that's the overall scheme we're looking at as we're putting this together. And I think it is a quality project. I think it's something that for a community our size to do something like this is remarkable, because I think it really says a commitment we have to walkability, to other modes of transportation, and that connection from the river to the 25th Street and all the associated projects in between. It becomes a very important link to tie that all together. So that's just kind of part on the design concept of this.
Since these will be water-wise kind of plant, will we have placards or anything in those planters so that people as they walk by can understand what maybe they would want to plant?
Well, we probably don't want to do that out on the street area, because you've got bikes on one side, you got cars on the other. We might try to develop something else that talks about that, and I know the gardens that are being worked on will also talk about those type of plants, and we might be able to make references that way to it.
Just to educate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Montgomery? Thanks, Greg.
council members. This will be probably the more boring part, so if we need to stand and move around, we'll talk about a little bit about numbers. We have talked a little bit about it tonight, about the Grant Promenade will be developed using key elements of complete streets. So the methodology we used in trying to study what the impact would be is, in recent years, complete streets have been implemented in a growing number of communities around the country. These projects have been studied to evaluate the economic impact of complete street improvements. Most available impact analysis are based on case studies that are specific to certain project areas and communities. At present, there are no widely accepted multipliers in economic development. We try to create multipliers to look at everything. The streets are kind of a different type of an element. However, there are many studies to describe the positive economic impact of complete streets, and several quantify. So in this particular study, we used two different methodologies. One is a study that is developed by the New York City DOT, assesses the effect of complete street improvements on ground level retail sales. The study compares the change in sales to street improvement sites to several comparison sites selected for their similarity to the improvement site. For the three projects with improvements most similar to the Grant Promenade proposal, growth in retail sales at the improvement sites exceed that at the comparison sites by an average of 6% in year 1, 13% in year 2, and 31% in year 3. So we looked at that information and basically extrapolated that data and applied it across to the area that we did and tried to make some comparison. One of the things as we look across this, and I'm not going to go through the whole report, I'm going to give you the summary data, but one of the things that I caution is that an increase in property values and retails associated with complete streets projects cannot be attributed solely to the street improvements alone. Changes in land use patterns, such as increased density, also are critical to economic impact. The logic at this point becomes circular because to change the density and development pattern, we need a walkable street. So which one happens first, in my opinion? Having a walkable street leads to the latter and will lead to some others, which speaks to my second point and the second methodology that we used. As we look at that particular data and we extrapolated our estimate of the impact of this particular type of a street pattern using that methodology is an increase in tax revenue, a net change of about $558,658 per year. That's a substantial increase. The challenge is that based on the cost, that's about a 17-year repayment. So as we looked at that, we said, okay, that's a very conservative look at how that works. That's the direct impact. We didn't really figure indirect impacts, which I'll talk about in my final point as I go through. The alternative property valuation method is used in addition to raising property values. The Grant Promenade is expected to catalyze development project along its length. So what we did is we went through and looked at what footprints we could possibly increase and what they would look like based on having the Grant Promenade. We identified the areas along the promenade that are most likely to develop and made several assumptions about how they will develop. No more than 1/3 of each area will be used for parking, and the remaining 2/3 will be available buildable area. All new construction will be 4 stories tall, and the value of new construction will be estimated at current value at $150 per square foot. We also identified several buildings that are likely to be redeveloped along the promenade. To estimate the value, we assume that the size of those buildings will not change and that the value of the renovation will be $100 a square foot. So this is directly of those buildings that face along the promenade. The conclusion there was that our valuation in that particular method alone would look at a 6-year payback if those things were to occur. So the issue is what is really realistic in those two approaches? And the answer is we really don't know. But we know that one thing is that neither are possible, in our opinion, without the development of the promenade. It basically goes to some things that we've already talked about. And one of those things are, we have the quantifiable or nearly quantifiable, as close as we can get, and we have qualitative issues. In this particular case, the Grant Promenade proposal will generate non-quantifiable benefits that will become a cornerstone of quality neighborhoods in downtown Ogden. The promenade will create a vibrant walking and bikeable corridor between historic 25th and the Ogden River Project. The corridor and its attractiveness to bicyclists and pedestrians will help distinguish Ogden from other cities. And it's this point that I want to make sure that we're clear on. That without elements that make us different from other communities, when we go out in economic development, we point to those things that make us different. One of the great differences is our proximity to nature. The other one that we're trying to do is that this is a place that you want to live, that is walkable, and is different than living in most other communities along the Wasatch Front. When we go out to recruit, there are a lot of other choices that businesses can make. They can go to Salt Lake, they can go to a lot of suburban neighborhoods, and they have those opportunities. We pitch ourselves as being a small urban area that you can walk across and be at and be part of the downtown fabric. Without a downtown corridor, which I think we've all talked about for years, that's a walkable corridor, it's very hard for us to develop a walkable community. And we always have pushback when we don't have those elements, because people say, well, I need a car to go a block. And so those particular costs end up costing us in parking, additional road space, and other things. So this is a very key part to the development pattern that we need in order to establish the kind of economic development that we'd like to do. We can do it a different way, but this is the kind that we want to do. So given that, we believe that there's a reasonable economic expectation that the payback is going to happen within a time frame that is acceptable. How it will exactly emerge, I have to be real careful, because I did this once before when I first started on a piece of property called Winco, and I was a little wrong. So I'm usually a little reticent to jump in and say exactly what will happen. So, but we have, I think, enough indication from complete street projects across the United States that we know that they are significant improvements and significant economic development improvements.
So with your assumptions with the research that you presented, was it for the entire stretch or just?
Entire stretch.
So it's the entire stretch?
Yeah, and that's one thing, and thanks for bringing that out. We did it for the entire stretch and not this particular piece, because it was hard. We can't really digest what the economic impact is, so we did it for the entire $6 million improvement. So we're looking for the entire improvement over that period. Thanks
And I
for
would,
that clarification.
I would assume that the economic impact would maybe be lessened if it was only a block or two, because then it's not really a.
It's what we're looking at is the key elements that we need to coordinate. 25th Street, the river, and the downtown junction area, all of those need to be brought together and have, that's really the complete piece is really where we get the economic benefit. And so that's the part that we need to push towards, is completing that as soon as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. I just was wondering if the council could get a copy of that report.
You may.
That was really cool.
I actually made copies.
Great. And the second question, is this the first complete street in Utah?
Good question.
They know.
Greg? There is another complete street like this, but it's not a street. If you look at the design elements for the downtown Salt Lake corridor, it's a walking corridor, but it actually goes through a shopping mall.
Doesn't count. So I think we call this the first complete street in Utah.
We'd have to do a little research.
I always thought that the road that went through Monument Valley was kind of a complete street, but for different reasons.
As far as this template, it's going to work for these two blocks, and I know it hasn't been designed, but as an economic developer, as you are, and an expert in that field, is this likely to, the template going to change and evolve as it goes further south or closer to the river?
The template for this street is the template for this street.
It'll be the same every block.
If you were to ask a second corollary question, and we developed another complete street in another neighborhood or another area, that street would have its own nature and its own particular design. But no, this one is designed, and the reason for the integrated design is so that it ties all of the elements together so that people see it as a corridor that they can go all the way down one way or another and basically make that travel lane without any kind of impediments to that travel, whether it's walking or biking or that, just general car access that goes through there. That's why it's called a complete street. So.
Okay, thank you.
Do any of the studies ever look at accidents or casualties or?
Yes, there are. And actually, Jay addressed that, and then it actually goes down significantly. And I didn't put that because that's not really my discussable area. Remember, I always talk about how much dollar we generate, and if somebody gets rolled over, I kind of look at that differently. No, but it actually, and I think Jay could address that in the same studies that we took this from, there is quite a significant amount of safety. There was a concern in New York in part of the project that there would be a significant increase in traffic and pedestrian interaction accidents, and it actually went down.
So I just have, one, and it's an interesting study, but, it's in Brooklyn and Manhattan. There's a lot more density. People typically don't have cars. Having a car there is kind of a liability. Mm-hmm. So do you think that?
I think that's a reasonable limitation of the study, but to find a comparable community our size, so there are limitations to the methodology. That's why we did 2 of them. Is we took that one because that's the only data available on complete streets. I'd love to have a community the size of Ogden, but that didn't exist. So we used the 2 methods just to say, okay, there isn't a scientific formula answer to this one. There's a range. And all I can give you is the range that says there is a reasonable potential that we will get a yield on this particular investment. It could be 17 years, it could be 6 years. But either way you look at it, the other part that I didn't do is if we would have done a broader indirect study and we would have gone out and said, what will that impact the neighborhoods that feed off of that, and that it increases the desire to live in our eastern communities in the central city. I don't know. We think it's significant, but I could never give you a number that I have to justify that because I don't have that much history in it. But we're not the first community out there looking at complete streets as part of enhancements to the community. So.
And maybe the increase would be slower than what they saw in New York just because, you have a culture where people are used to not having cars. And
one of the challenges with looking at catalytic elements is you can have a real fast one, you can put it in and all of a sudden things will sprout up, or you can have one that takes a long time to basically adopt, but it still drives a lot of things. I think what this will do is help us drive more residential downtown, but it also gives us a different approach to the development plate, especially in the western blocks that are currently attached to Grant Promenade, especially the western block where we currently have Movie Grill and those types of areas. It gives us a different approach to those. I can't tell you what that approach will be today. Greg and I are just starting to talk about what the possibilities are. Our goal is within a year to present to the council some different approaches to how that will develop out. But that's why this becomes a building block. That building block is important for us to talk to developers and other people as we go down. Without it, it becomes kind of a blank, just pass-by street. It doesn't calm traffic. It doesn't encourage residential. It doesn't encourage much of anything else. So,
at the completion of the project, we could do that type of a study and see what the impact would be in the area. and other cities may come and take a look at that. But as we looked at the Grant Promenade in our study, do we anticipate a ripple effect that it will enhance or impact other areas outside the perimeter of the Grant Promenade?
That's the hard part. We tried to confine our study to those parcels that touched the Grant Promenade up to Washington and then down the block to Wall. That was the only ripple effect that we could see that was observable. We think it will have a lot more as far as who it attracts to the city, but that was impossible for us in the study period to really delineate and define and give you any kind of reasonable idea of what was going to be there. To directly address it, we think it's going to have a great impact on our ability to recruit people to live in the downtown area. But I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't have a clue. I lost my clairvoyance license. So
Your crystal ball broke?
And I'm sure you've already thought about this, but is there a way to put that up during the marathon so people know what we're doing and that it's, how
That's a good
cool it will
question.
be next year and those kind of things?
That's probably Justin that needs to answer that.
Like a picture or maybe even.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea.
At
and
check-in or
We
something?
could work with the Goal Foundation too to help as, when they do the packets and to help people see
Look at
some
us
of this
grow.
information
Yeah.
to get that out. So we'll discuss that with the Goal Foundation and see if we can incorporate that.
Great idea.
Thanks.
One of those excuse our dust.
Yeah, excuse our dust, but wait till next
Back
year.
next year.
Yeah.
Or a couple months later, so.
Excuse our high adventure course.
Does that conclude the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing, so if you have comments or suggestions concerning this project, now would be the time to come forward and give them to us.
Seeing no movement, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Garner to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Before we take a vote, I actually just had one more question. I don't know if anyone else did. So we've got our budget. This is probably for Lori Johnson. I don't know. How have we considered future maintenance? I mean, this is a really high caliber project. Have we considered budgeting or how we are going to budget for future maintenance?
I don't know that that's been totally discussed yet. I know we need to. But I think Justin's panic's been just to get it started, and Justin, you may have a little more idea of what he's thinking.
Yeah, one of the things and the reasons we are proposing to do what we're doing is actually sustainability. So we don't have to be back there fixing the roadway or other elements. The areas that we need to get in and maintain is the landscaped island. So that's something that we're working on and discussing of how to move forward. But a lot of these elements that were included by MGB&A was to help make it maintenance friendly. And also with the pavement section and the bike lanes and things like that, we're actually doing them such that they will have a very long lifespan.
But we need to build in the maintenance cycle, and he will in the funding that we get.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any concerns or discussion?
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2014-13.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Garner for adoption of ordinance 2014-13. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gochner?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes unanimously. We're really looking forward to this. You guys are going to have to be working hard to get done by August 1st, I think.
I don't know what he's doing sitting here. He's
I don't
got
either.
work to do.
Yeah, what are you doing here? All right. Next item is also a public hearing, nomination of a historic resource vacuum exchange building.
Only Greg this time.
Only Greg. Okay.
He's the vacuum guy.
council members, let's see, let me put this up to begin with. We're talking about a building that was built as a grocery store, the Mortensen Grocery Store on the corner of 32nd and Washington Boulevard, built around 1920. That building is better known as the Vacuum Exchange Building today. And the owner of the property has petitioned the Landmarks Commission, and now their recommendation is being forwarded to you to consider placing this building that's fading in and out onto the local register. The building is a commercial vernacular building of that time period, and its uniqueness, based on the ordinance, lies in two things. One is neighborhood significance. As the city developed, and I don't know why that is not focusing, I'll try to get that come in. As the neighborhood developed in this area, the concept of neighborhood grocery stores, the concept of neighborhood commercial centers was important. And this is one of the last remaining buildings of the two-story commercial type in this area that had developed. All the others have been taken down. There other developments has taken place, and this remains as the one last building that shows how our neighborhoods developed, based around small commercial areas and the neighborhood around it. So by that, it has a significance in the history of Ogden in terms of development, because of this is a prominent corner. When this building was actually built, 32nd Street wasn't even there. 32nd Street came later. But it symbolized how neighborhoods interacted. Another part of the ordinance why this becomes an element to be looked at as placing on the local register is the significance in terms of it shows important aspects of cultural development in our community. The Vacuum Exchange Building is one of those few buildings that still has the service elevator in the sidewalk. Commercial deliveries we've made from the street, taken down to the basement through the sidewalk area. There's the opening, the gate that goes down into underneath the building and into the building for goods and delivery. You can remember, some of you have been in Ogden for a long time, we used to have that all along Washington, along Grant, those metal grates that covered the sidewalk that then had elevators in them, where deliveries were made and then taken to the basement of the buildings. This still has that preserved as one of those elements of our cultural heritage and how commercial development has evolved through the decades. For those two reasons, the Landmarks Commission has recommended this building be placed on the local register, that it meets those criteria defined in the ordinance, and their vote was unanimous on that recommendation to you.
Any questions for Mr. Montgomery? Are the vintage vacuums part of the...
Those are, I guess, added features that people notice this building by.
Is it zoned to be able to use it as a grocery store again? Or
Yes.
I know that's not part of
Yeah,
this.
it's a commercial zone, so all those types of uses, any retail sales type. And as you can see in the picture, the upstairs was apartments. I mean, that's how it was originally built, and there was living space above. And so there was a mixed-use building, the original mixed-use buildings.
Any other questions for Mr. Montgomery? Thank you. This is also a public hearing. We'd like to hear from those who have concerns, and we'd also like to welcome the petitioner if they're here. Hi.
I'm Sherry Page, and I'm the new owner of the Vacuum Exchange. Get a little emotional because I'm a little passionate about this. About a year ago, I met a little old man that had been in this little old store for 64 years. And wasn't really thinking about buying a vacuum store. I actually just went in to meet him. He was, his brother actually was a friend of my husband's, my now husband. And watched this guy interact with the public. And the customer service that he gave is phenomenal. And finding out that he was ready to sell this place, I started considering it, not for myself so much as for my brother. But I ended up loving this store and this man so much that I promised him that if I bought it, I would find a way to make sure it stayed there. Because it is in a unique building and people truly expect that building to be there. I have had people come from as far as Oregon to wish me luck. Phone calls from all over, mainly just old customers of Larry's who have been in the store, have known that customer service, appreciated what we do, and I just want to keep that a part of Ogden, which I'm now happy to say I live here now. I'm actually from Hiram, but I live here now, and I'm part of the community, and the community, just like the store, has grown on me. The city has been overwhelmingly gracious. Joseph, that did the initial research, was phenomenal. Glenn Symes has been great. The boards have been wonderful, and I just hope you guys see this place for what I do, because it already is a landmark. I mean, people say, you know, that place with the vacuums right on the building, go down another block, turn east, and you're here. You know, it just is that. So.
Are you going to keep the vacuums?
You know, there are people who, including the other board, who thought that that was part of the landmark. And I agree and I disagree. Those vacuums have to go. That plywood sign needs to go. What I would actually like to do, that other thing is still on here. If you can see the original, can you blow that up a little bit?
This one right here?
Yeah, that original awning. I've actually been talking to Sugar House Awnings about seeing what they can do to get an awning very similar to that, perhaps with our logo, and alleviating that upper sign, that plywood sign, and just having our logo. And then they would build 3 shelves. And you can't really see it from that photograph, but let's try that one again. All right, the windows up above, there's four sets of windows up above with the brick in between, and what we'd like to do is put a platform for 3 nice vacuums up there so that it still actually has that landmark trait, but it's a little cleaner and a little nicer.
What other improvements are you looking at for there? I know the roof needs to be repaired.
The roof does need some repair. All of the window frames have rotted. They're going to need repair. There's some facial damage. There's some corner damage. The actual chute, the grocery chute, some years ago, 10, 12 years ago, according to the former owner, was open. They were doing some work down there, and a man had a seizure and went down in it in his car. And it actually broke the foundation. It caved in the sidewalk, which has never been fixed, and broke the foundation of the basement. So there's some flooding in the basement. And to be able to preserve that chute, I think we'll have to build a retaining wall to keep that from flooding out and just keep a sub pump. That's the only idea we've been able to come up thus far. There will be new glass put in the front of the building, and I don't think we're going to paint them anymore. Those will also be cleaned up. Eventually maybe put some small awnings over those upper windows and just clean up the property. The back, which is not part of the historical part of this, but the back property has a garage that is actually caving in. And because I have to rent the 6 stalls from the man that owns that property, we're considering maybe putting some parking for the store in the back versus having that collapsing building in the rear. And all of the wood around the fence is rotted, so that will have to be replaced. But just know that I'm a single girl from Kearns with not a ton of money, just a lot of hopes and dreams for this place.
Very cool.
you for caring.
I'm really excited that you're doing it more like Mortenson's store, trying to bring back some of that awnings and just some of that old, historical touch. I think
Good,
it's
I'm
going
glad
to
you
look
approve.
beautiful.
Yeah. I think it's kind of a neat old building. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Or anyone else?
That's where I got my vacuum cleaner.
We have lots of vacuums from there in my family, too.
Hi, my name's Shelley Levitt. I'm 1153 24th Street. I agree with the historical part of it. I really like it. It is a landmark. My only concern, seeing not being a homeowner or an owner of a historical spot, but speaking with a few, once you get on the registry, you can't get off of it. And the cost of it can get quite expensive. Speaking with the CJC this last week, he was saying how they wish they were not on the registry because of the expense to, once you're on the registry, you have to keep with the historical aspects and you can't do any changes, even if it will improve, and it can get quite pricey. So if there was another way to keep it in Ogden City without maybe restricting you or a future owner, I think I would see that as a better option than, or if there was a way to change it so that if for some reason you wanted to leave that registry, that was an option there. But with it being that you cannot, it makes it a little more difficult. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Seeing no movement, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chair Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I assume that you know all of this, the expenses
I do know
and...
it, and what I'm hoping, from what I'm learning from the city and the people that have been helping with this, it's 3 bricks thick. It was built that way.
You might need to come up to the microphone. These are recorded.
The building is actually very structurally sound. It's 3 bricks thick. It was built that way because it was the grocery store. Although there is some damage around the roof. And the wind.
We're just trying to make sure that you haven't been dissuaded, I guess is really all I was
I mean, I think because of what needs to be done, because of the majority of it being brick, I don't see that that I can't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Would she be able to put the awnings up by the windows on
Greg,
the
I'm wondering
next
if
floor?
you might respond as the local
That
expert.
might be well.
To that comment, and maybe Councilmember Stevens, too.
Okay. Yeah, maybe comment on a couple things. Any buildings on the register is always reviewed by the Secretary of the Interior standards, which talk about preservation and restoration and additions. So because you're on the register doesn't mean you can't add to the building. It just talks about how you can add to the building. When you're looking at preservation work or restoration work, one of the things they look at is pictorial evidence. Is there a reason has that been there before? Well, you can see with this, there is a very good pictorial evidence that awnings were there. So that becomes very simple in approving through the Landmarks Commission because you have evidence of what you're trying to do, that it really was on that building at a time period. And even such things as the vacuums can also gain significance on their own. And so one of the standards addresses that items over time that have been added to the building can have their own significance and means that they can still become part of that preservation work on a property. It's true that, yes, there's some more technical detail that takes place, and that is just trying to keep and preserve the character of the building. I know, just a sidebar on the Children's Justice Center, I mean, part of their problem that they ran into was they did a great remodeling work, but whoever did the work didn't do it right, and it's collapsing again after 10 years. And that wasn't so much the landmarks as the construction method of whoever did the last installation. And so, there's some concerns that happen that way. But overall, yeah, there are some standards you have to go through. You do have to be approved by the Landmarks Commission. But the standards really are not unreasonable if you're really concerned about trying to keep a building that you bought.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Since there's no further discussion now, I will make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2014-14.
Second.
we have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Vice Chair Gochner, for adoption of ordinance 2014-14. And this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks.
Aye.
Vice Chair Gochner.
Aye.
Chair Heyer.
Aye, that passes. We wish you luck on your project and hope it goes well for you. And we're glad to have you in Ogden.
Y'all come get a discount anytime.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much.
Love your passion.
Next item on our agenda is reports from the Planning Commission, item concerning residential porches amendments. Welcome, Mr. Montgomery.
The city had received a petition to amend the zoning ordinance to allow porches to encroach into the front yard setback. The actual petition that the city received dealt with only the R18 zones. But as the Planning Commission reviewed this petition, they felt that the concept should apply to all residential zones. And so their recommendation to you tonight deals with all the residential zones rather than just the R18, which was petitioned. The concept of a porch really is again, historic concept of the interaction between what takes place in the public realm, the sidewalk, the street, and transitioning that public realm to a semi-public area and then to the private space being the home. And porches were always that area of that interaction taking place. And so many of the homes built in the first part of the 20th century had porches. That was just a common thing. As we kind of evolved and became more private, we took that space and eliminated it and said the backyard is the space that the people want for their homes. And porches were really eliminated in an architectural design concept. So the ramblers and those things you see in the late 50s, 60s, and now, porches were really eliminated. So as this gentleman petitioned the city, he was in a situation where he has a home, and to get the porch he wanted, he would encroach into the front yard setback. Now, the front yard setback is an area that says there's no building that occurs beyond this point to create that transitional open space. But as we reviewed this and discussed this with the Planning Commission, we felt that porches are that part of that transitional space. And we're seeing more and more trends of new urbanism to introduce porches and to allow encroachments, to get that public realm and that sociality existing between the street and the home, to reintroduce that. And we've seen many places throughout the country where they have looked at exclusions from the setback for porches. And so as we looked at that, we felt this is a very appropriate area to look at revising. Some of the areas in Ogden, because they were built prior to zoning ordinances, already are into the setback. You know, in some zones, the homes, the zone may require a 20-foot setback, but the home's already 15 feet from the sidewalk and that, so it's already encroaching. And to apply this ordinance universally, we felt there should be some standards that could work for any type of zone and any type of situation. That is that we would allow encroachments to take place as long as there's a 12-foot distance from the front property line to the porch to allow for these different encroachments that may take place. For example, in an R18 zone, you have a 30-foot setback. So you could easily put a porch in there and still keep 12 feet. Some of the smaller areas, maybe it's 20 feet, but you could add a porch and still keep that 12-foot setback. So we try to accommodate all the different areas that we looked at. The other key thing is the porches have to remain open, other than just bug netting. I'll use that as a term of screens. But you can't enclose them with permanent structures. They have to remain open. They can have a rail height that's enclosed, but you still have to keep that space open because this again is a transition space. It's not meant to be a new enclosed room. And so the language prohibits it from being enclosed and actually prohibits from building another room above it. Again, this is that transition space from the front into the home. It's that reception area, and so it should act that way. We also talk about in the ordinance that then the porch has to architecturally fit the home. So that same style that's in the home, the porch needs to be designed to make it look like it was intended to be there and not an afterthought. So there are some architectural criteria, but as each home is different, we couldn't specify one type of thing. We just said it has to fit with the architecture of the home. The last part we talk about is some minimums and maximums, that the porch can extend a maximum of 8 feet out, which is generally enough room for chairs, for people to sit out and to be able to walk, and a minimum of 4 feet. So we set that scale as what you have to have a porch. Then we say the width of it has to at least be 5 feet, the front of the house, but it can't extend the full width of the house. We again set those criteria to help it make a statement to the home, to the front of the house. So with those ordinance requirements, the Plan Commission is recommending that this provision be approved to all the residential zones.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Montgomery concerning this? Thank you. All right. We'd like to accept public input on this. If you have anything to add, if you'd come to the microphone. If you could give us your name and address and.
What's that?
If you give us your name and address, please.
Yes, Paul Guimon, 1563 29th Street. Good evening, council members. I'm the original petitioner for this. The quick story is last fall we went through a design phase and we had some resources to put a porch in. We went to the city. Everything was approved except we did come across the setback law. So we have about 56 feet from the curb back to our house. And so we were encouraged to go through this process, which it's been a good process. It was, we got some great input from the Planning Commission and they did a vote and recommend it for a 9-0 unanimous. So that was exciting. So I'm here in favor. Hopefully you guys will vote yes. And we're actually excited to put the porch on and get it rolling. So. And thanks, Mr. Montgomery, for those, for kind of shepherding this along. So,
all right, thanks, Paul.
That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
En español?
Do we need a translator?
No, just kidding.
I know poquito.
Okay. My name is Jerry Montes. I've been Ogden City employee for 16 years, and I live in Ogden for 35 years. When I got married, me and my wife decided to have only 2 kids so we can afford to raise them. And actually we did. We spend our money, our time with our kids. Now that we send them out to college and they're all moved out of the house, we always talk about renovating our house and beautifying our house from outside. So we was trying to build a porch, the front porch, because me and my wife, she likes to read, and we sit on the front porch spring and fall and keep an eye on the neighborhood. Actually, we have neighbors come over and saying, we're living out of town, can you please keep an eye in our property? We know that you sit outside for a long period. We sit outside until 2 o'clock in the morning. And we actually believe that by doing that, we prevented a lot of bad stuff from happening around our neighborhood. I live out 32nd and Lincoln. And when we decided, now that we have the money to renovate our house and build that porch, we came across the same problem. We only have 25 feet from my front of the house to the curve, and my property line is actually 2 feet inside the grass into the sidewalk. So I only have like 15 and a half feet according to your records. So there's no way I can build an 8-foot porch, which we're going to build it as pergola style. So it's going to be a nice looking porch. So if you guys agree with Mr. Montgomery, it'll be a good deal for us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no movement.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I don't think this is a public hearing.
Okay.
I do need to declare, this is probably the only time this will ever happen with this body where the petitioner actually lives between two members of the council. But Mr. Guimond is my neighbor, but I didn't know it was
I'll
coming
admit
up
that he's
till
my
it was
neighbor,
on the
too.
agenda. So,
Can I clarify something real quick? Is it the property line or the curb? Did you say
property line.
property line? With that, I'll make a motion to adopt the residential proposed ordinance 2014-17.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Wicks, to adopt proposed ordinance 2014-17. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gochner?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes unanimously.
Go build a porch.
Go build a porch. You know, that is a good thing.
For both of you, thank you.
Would you please watch your neighbors also? Yes.
Well, and thanks for being a force for change for the whole city.
I know.
That's awesome.
You know, I remember
Glad
when
you're
I was
here.
young, there was a lot of people on porches, and boy, you know, I just missed that. I'm glad to see it's coming back.
So you're already bringing people together because I've never met Jerry, so.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right. Thank you. Next item is reports from administration. First item is the new D School and Community Center land transfer.
Ward Ogden will be
Hey, Mr.
presenting
Ogden.
this.
Chair and members of the council, this item before you is carrying forward the provisions of the interlocal agreement between Ogden City and the Ogden City School District that was dated March 20th of 2013 for the development of a new elementary school with an associated community center, and it's located at 2100 Madison Avenue in Ogden. The property, just to give a brief current status update, the property acquisitions and designs are nearing completion. The financing arrangements are underway and looking good for the new markets tax credits that we've talked about that are a major funding mechanism for the school. Construction is planned to start this summer, looking at hopefully mid-August. It may be a little later, but that's what they're planning on. The city's participation with the school project involves the sale of vacant land that's at the parcel at 2154 Jefferson Avenue. And this is anticipated to be the western entrance, part of the western entrance to the school, as you see on the diagram above. Also, it involves vacating a portion of Madison Avenue to allow for the footprint of the school. That vacation goes from the property line on the west side of Madison Avenue to the curb line, what's currently the curb line of the street. And then and then an encroachment permit over the remaining portion of Madison Avenue. We'd also enter into a shared use agreement for Liberty Park. The graphic is good because it shows the park space as it interrelates with the school, and the wings on the school face east into the park. The idea is that the front of the school facing west needs a formal entrance, and the traffic and pedestrian flow is best suited to enter from the west. And so the proposal is that the city's parcel, which we don't have the labels on this particular one, but It is the south third of that entrance appendage that comes to, down out to the left. So it's a half acre in size, and the other portion, the other acre or 2/3 on the north side is owned by the LDS Church, and there's a negotiation underway with them to transfer ownership to the school district of that parcel, which is currently used as a parking lot. The city's portion is vacant land. It was purchased a few years ago for the price of $32,547. The intent was to make use of it in neighborhood development, neighborhood revitalization. So our proposal is that this piece of ground be granted to the school district for use as their portion of their western entrance. And because of the grant, less than market value, we need to determine that there are public policy factors that justify the grant. And so I'll state what they are, the recommendations. That it makes better use of the interior blocks in the East Central community. It provides safe pedestrian walkways to schools, and in particular elementary schools. It supports the integration of a community center into the elementary school through the establishment of improved parking flow and reduction in parking conflicts for a variety of school users. It allows the school to effectively participate in the shared use of Liberty Park by having the main school entrance face west, as I just mentioned. And it improves the aesthetic quality of the school within the neighborhood. The economic return, of course, is zero anticipated in terms of monetary cash value, but there are community benefits derived from the transfer, as we just stated. So with those public policy factors in mind, we recommend that the council adopt the resolution which authorizes the transfer of this property to Ogden School District. And as stated in the resolution, it's based on the conditions that a new elementary school be constructed with a community center, and that the dimensions of and design of the school's main entry on Jefferson Avenue, the western appendage there, be done essentially with the design that as presented, and that stormwater be detained to the degree that so that it will not increase stormwater outflow any more than it currently is, so not to add to the stormwater, and that the parking that's created would be allowed to be shared with other neighborhood uses and at times when it's not needed for school use. So that's the recommendation. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Ogden? Thank you.
Did it?
Is that it? Oh.
Yes.
Okay. You were tag teaming so much today, I just wonder if you had somebody else waiting. Okay. All right. We'll accept public input on this. If any of you have items for us to consider. Seeing none, we're back to the council for discussion and resolution.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2014-11.
I second it.
I have a motion by Vice Chair Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Stevens for adoption of resolution 2014-11. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gochner?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye, that passes. And you said they're going to start around August? Oh, there you are. You moved. Okay, well, good.
Hopefully.
Goal, huh?
The goal.
Hey, next item is also a report from administration concerning a lease purchase agreement, refinancing reimbursement.
Only Mr. Goodwin will present.
Good evening, Chair Heyer and council members. Currently, the city is involved in finalizing 3 lease purchase agreements that were discussed with the council last December. Specifically, those lease purchase agreements are to purchase 10 new refuse trucks, trade in 10 that we have existing and buy new ones. A second one is to buy 50-plus new pickup trucks and trade in existing pickup trucks. And the third one is to buy 35 new police vehicles. Traditionally, on lease agreements such as this, the process is that we order the vehicles, we get the lease documents put into place, the agreements are made according to interest rates and so forth. We take delivery on the vehicles, and within a couple of days, the proceeds of the lease are dispersed, and the leasing bank makes payment directly to the vendor rather than having the money come to the city. In this particular case, we've run into a timing issue as regards to paying for the vehicles. Because of the number of vehicles that we're purchasing with 35 police vehicles and 50 pickups, those vehicles are not all coming in at one time. They're coming in 5 to 10 at a time. We started taking possession of the police vehicles about 3 weeks ago. Currently, we've received 30 of them. We still have 5 that we're waiting for. We've taken possession of about half of the pickup trucks. The local dealership that is providing those vehicles, Westland Ford, is requiring us to pay for the vehicles as they come in, but we cannot finalize the leases until we actually have possession of all the vehicles. It's one of the requirements of the lease. So what that requires us to do is use existing city funds that are not required for current expenditures but are sitting in city investments. We take those funds, pay the vendor directly from the city, and then at the time when the leases are finalized, we will have the leasing bank send those funds directly to the city to reimburse ourselves for those expenditures. So whenever a governmental agency is doing a tax-exempt financing, which this is, IRS requires the governing body to pass what is called a reimbursement resolution. Simply put, what that resolution does is it states the intent of the city to reimburse ourselves from the lease proceeds for expenditures that were designated as proper expenses under that lease agreement. That assures IRS that we are using the lease proceeds that we are reimbursing ourselves with in a proper way, and it also makes sure that the process is open not only to the city administration but to the council and to the public of how this lease agreement is taking place. So tonight what we have is a reimbursement resolution which declares the intent of the city council to reimburse ourselves for expenditures that we will do to pay for those vehicles up front and then use the proceeds to reimburse ourselves. It does not involve any kind of a budgetary amendment or opening because we are simply using existing cash funds on that the city has and then reimbursing those with the proceeds of the lease. It also does not have any effect on our negotiations with the leasing bank, in this case U.S. Bank, in regards to interest rates or maturity dates or anything like that. In fact, in December when we began the negotiations with U.S. Bank, they quoted us a rate of 1.23 for the police lease, and they've come back in now and redone that negotiation, and the rate has dropped to 1.09. So we recommend that we go ahead and pass the resolution to allow us to make sure that the vehicles come in on time and can be used by the city, with the understanding that everything will be reimbursed to the city within 30 days. We won't be exposed to any kind of loss on interest rates other than just a couple of weeks for that to happen. Any questions I can answer for anybody?
Questions for Mr. Goodwin?
How many cars are we waiting on? How many cars are we waiting on?
We have 35 police vehicles that we're purchasing, and we've received about 30 of them. So we're still waiting for delivery of 5. We're ordering 56, I believe 56, 57, I'm not exactly sure, pickup trucks, and we have about 20 of those that have come in. So we're still waiting for quite a few of those to come in.
When do we
But
end?
the interest rate that we've received is good through the end of May. We anticipate that we'll have all this done by the end of April.
So the lease agreement will be finalized by the end of April then?
Yes.
That we're doing?
The one part that will not be finalized by the end of April is the refuse trucks, and those are not anticipated to be received until late May. And I don't know that we'll go through the same process with those because we're only doing 10 trucks. Those are all being built at the same time. We should take delivery of all those at the same time, so we won't have that problem.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay. What's your,
I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2014-12.
Second it.
have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks, to adopt proposed resolution 2014-12. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gochner?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes.
And thank you, Mr. Goodwin. This is a very good deal for the city.
Yeah, you've done a really good job at working this to where it really benefits the city. Appreciate your efforts.
I think the benefit is also the interest rate has dropped down, so
Oh, yeah.
that's been a great asset to us.
Been good. Okay, the next item is as public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no movement, comments from Dale?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Other council members?
Councilmember Heyer, I was able to attend along with Councilmember Stevens, the groundbreaking for the Lantern House today. And it was a great opportunity to interact with some citizens who are very passionate about meeting the needs of our homeless individuals in the community. And we weathered the windstorm today, so it was an opportunity to be there.
Well, we were glad you were there.
I guess I just want to throw a plug in for Earth Day, which is today, and just encourage people to use the city's 3 glass drop-off sites, and thank Jay Louder's department for making that happen. And, there's even a 4th dumpster up at Weber State now, so always want to encourage people to use those.
Anyone else? Okay, the next item number 10, the administration has requested that it be pulled from tonight's agenda and renoticed for May 6th. So we won't be having a close executive session.
So in that case, I'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion by Vice Chair Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Stevens to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll have a work session immediately following this city council meeting, and the items to be discussed are noticed on the agenda.